Yes, thanks a lot. Let's kick off this session. A very warm welcome, everyone. This session, Making the Leap from Lab to Radical and Disruptive Innovation with the EIC Pathfinder. I am Fredrik Horstedt. I'm Vice President of Collaboration, Innovation and Sustainable Development at Chalmers University. That's far up north, Gothenburg, West Sweden. I'm also, in this particular context, I'm a board member of the EIC Advisory Board, trying to help the Commission shape the EIC as a concept forward. And as a matter of fact, that is one purpose of this session. As you will see, we will have the possibility to shed some light on what we believe are the strengths of the Pathfinder instrument, and we also have the possibilities to articulate where we see the improvement potential of this instrument as we go forward into the future. So we have some Commission representatives in here. Hi, Teresa, Viorel, and others. Very warm welcome. I know that you will listen in and learn a lot about how the perspective of the entrepreneurs, of the researchers and innovators that has been active in FET projects, how they perceive the instrument and so on. So that's one purpose. As we shape this going into the EIC context, we can help the Commission assist them in bringing forward some particular points of improvement. The other aim of this session is really to stimulate and inspire you in the audience as an important part of the EIC community and society. Hope we will achieve something of that type at least. To achieve this, we have some very interesting people with us. You will see in the first part of the session, we will have three 8-minute presentations. They are flash presentations. They are conducted by some very interesting researchers and innovators experienced in the Pathfinder program, or really the origins of the Pathfinder program. They have been involved in the FET programs, Future Emerging Technologies. We will listen to them and how they perceive the Pathfinder support in cases of science-driven innovation, and also, importantly, the challenges and success factors that they foresee in making this leap from lab to radical and disruptive innovation, going from lab to market. So we start out with these three 8-minute presentations. They will be fast, they will be intensive, they will be content-packed. And I will apologize now because I will have to take on the unwanted role as the evil timekeeper, and I will help you do that to make sure that we get most out of this 60 minutes. And then after these three presentations, we will switch mode to a panel discussion. Then we will have two additional panelists coming to the stage. And we will have a discussion on how the EIC and the Pathfinder in an even better way can enable researchers and innovators going from lab to market. So that's really the concept and the setup. I hope you like it. We don't have a plan B, unfortunately. So good sign that no one is leaving currently. There will hopefully be time for some questions from the audience, and we have a very padded microphone, so I will just toss it around, and in that way we'll get an interaction going. So for the first presenter, I would like to welcome Anna Mulligan to the stage. She's the CEO of Neuroelectrics, a company aiming to change the way we interact with the brain, developing technologies that monitor and stimulate the brain to help patients in need. Neuroelectrics is quite a famous startup. It was awarded in 2015 the Health Award by Wired UK magazine, and it was in 2016 recognized in one of the most esteemed entrepreneurial tables of the year, Best Entrepreneurial Companies in America by Entrepreneur magazine. So please welcome Anna Mulligan to the stage. Big round of applause.
So it's a pleasure to be here. You forgot my most important award. So the Commission gave me the Women Innovator Award in 2014. And, you know, my heart is always deep in Europe, not only because of the award, which meant a lot to me as a woman entrepreneur, but because I wouldn't be here without the support of the Commission. And that's one of the reasons why I accepted to be in the advisory board of the European Innovation Council as a voice for the entrepreneurs, but I think to give back all that Europe has given me as an entrepreneur. So today I'm going to share with you how we have gone from science to the market. And this is my personal experience in my company, so take it as, you know, my experience. I think we build a model, and I think it can become inspirational. So now I live in the US, and you will see why later in the presentation, but I really joke with the Americans, and I tell them, listen, you start in garages, you know, your Silicon Valley companies. I started in the observatory of the top of the Barcelona mountain, a 1902 historic building. This is where we started StarLab in the year 2000. So, you know, we started with my co-founder, who is a physicist and mathematician, and we have one dream. He was a scientist, I was a business person, and we thought we have to take science to the market. It's not enough to do good science, we have to put it at use. So this was the motto and the vision of our company in year 2000. So think about that, it's year 2019. I think I have hit the market, but we are not yet there. So the first lesson learned is that it takes a lot of time to develop something new and to take it into the market. And we wanted to do something with social impact. So we started to research in space and in neuroscience. These were two areas that we thought they were going to be revolutionary for the 21st century. And in space, we started to work with the European Space Agency, and in neuroscience, we reached out to the Commission for support. And I think I love this slide. We started in 2006, reaching out to the Commission as an SME to fund research in neuroscience. And our first project was Sensation, which was a project to develop alertness, like a neuroscience technology to prevent drivers from falling asleep. But from there, we went to a variety of neuroscience technology enablers. One of our key projects is like we built up the know-how, the technology through all these projects. But Hive, which is a FED project, was transformational. So all these framework programs were really incremental, but I think that in FED, we really thought that this was going to be really big. So the objective of FED was to connect two brains, to do brain-to-brain communication, non-invasively. And we were the first SME in Spain to be awarded with a FED program because we were thinking long-term. And bottom line is that we really achieved brain-to-brain communication. So this paper was a paper in which we show how you could connect two brains remotely without any sensory information. And the paper explains how it's done, but it helped us to develop not only the EEG monitoring side, but also the stimulation side. So taking an idea to market is very hard, and I think you have to be like Madonna. So you have to reinvent yourself, you know, through the lifespan of, you know, of your idea to market and become something different. And we had three options: to license, to joint venture, or to spin off the technologies that we had developed in neuroscience. And we decided to do neuroelectrics. So neuroelectrics is a spin-off of StarLab, all built through European Framework Program and FED money. And what we are targeting is brain health. So we are hoping to help all these patients with this technology, which is an EEG and a stimulator device. So we can read and write over your brain non-invasively. So we have really escalated a lot the technology, and here is an example of how it works. So basically, you can imagine if the video launches, you can imagine that you'll go to an MRI, we'll take an MRI of you, or the EEG of you, and then we build a sophisticated brain model of your own brain, and we personalize therapies for your brain using non-invasive brain technology. So the level of sophistication of our technology is really amazing, and it has really been built through a lot of work of our engineers here in Europe. So I don't want to go more in detail, but we are doing all these clinical trials to help patients in need. And I just want to show you the data on our epilepsy trial. This trial is run towards FDA approval and at Boston Children's. And what we did is 10 days of stimulation in children that don't respond to medication. And we have been able to reduce seizures by 47%. Children whose alternative is surgery. So we want this to be taken home. But I think that my takeaway, is that we have bootstrapped the company in sales to the research community in 45 countries. Our technology is being used in 45 countries. And what do I take away? I think we really are an example of how we have taken, science to a company that has more than 5 million revenues of selling this technology and clinical trials. We will be the first American and European company to get the FDA approval. So I think that we are an example of how to transfer. I think that it takes time. You need to invest in hardcore science, so I think FET is great. I find that I would have loved to have support for prototype development. It was very hard to develop a real product from prototype to product. We didn't have a lot of funding at the beginning. We missed a lot of business talent in Europe, which I think is one of the things that prevent us from growing our companies more. I think that you really have to adapt. I'm not doing the same job I did before, and you really have to go more towards the business science teams. And I really think that you have to conquer the world and think big. I'm a European, I'm a Barcelonian by heart, but I don't see myself playing in Barcelona, in Spain, or in Europe. I sell like hell in the US, in Asia, and the playground for us is the world. So whatever innovation you're working on is going to help people everywhere. So we have to be aggressive and ambitious and scale our companies to really have the social impact that in Europe we value. So with that, I will leave you, and I'll be happy to take questions on things that may worry you from a research point of view to scale up companies.
Very good. Great, Anna. Thanks a lot. Please have a seat. So it takes time. Key is the team, and we need to think big. Some clear implications, and also thanks a lot for the needs expressed regarding some gaps in financing, regarding team competences, and also going from prototypes to products. Very important. Spare your question for the panel discussions. We will hopefully have room for a couple. And now to the next presentation. I would like to ask you to come to the stage, Bo. And Bo is the CEO of Creamtrack, please. And what we have with Creamtrack is really a light, neat, portable, very encapsulated sensor device. It's a matter of application for border control, customs control, police, etc. Hence the name. So research sprung out of DTU, Technical University of Denmark. Please go.
Okay, thank you very much, Fredrik. Just one correction. I'm involved in several companies, and you just talked about the other one. So, yeah, and this is not a company yet. This project is something spin out from DTU that we are working on, and the name of the project is Delight, and our aim is to revolutionize the eyeglass business. It all came from a FET project, FET Open, called Vision, and that was about printing colors using a laser, without pigments. The inventors of this technology, Anders and Xiaolong, they had this great idea. They had also had the ambition that they wanted to spin it out, and how do we exploit that technology? And they discussed with their peers at the university, and they agreed that they needed some commercial experts on the team in order to be able to bring it off the ground. And this is where I came in through our network. We were matched, and we started to say, okay, the next challenge is to find the best market for the technology. And so we started doing that together. And at that time, our technology was that we could make flat optical elements using a laser printer. And you can apply that for many things. And we looked at optical filters, we looked at lenses for smartphones, optical filters for diagnostic tools, and eyeglass lenses. And after talking to potential customers, we decided the eyeglass lenses was the most attractive market for us. And if you look at the numbers, I think you will agree. The eyeglass manufacturers that market is very consolidated, big players. The retail market are more fragmented. And in our mind, we think that it's not likely that the eyeglass manufacturers are going to disrupt their own business. I think we have seen several examples of companies refusing to disrupt their own business. So we had decided that we want to do that ourselves. But entering a new area or new market where we had no knowledge, we said, okay, we need to find a way. And in this case, it was just by, you can say, coincidence that I met Henrik Benson-Petersen. I was at a social event and we was talking, and I was telling people that I was involved in this very exciting new project and what we were discussing and what we were thinking about doing. And this tall guy, he came closer and closer, and then he said, I actually know something about this. And it turns out that Henrik, he's been involved in the eyeglass business on a very high executive level for a long period of time, and he's also a serial entrepreneur. So we teamed up, and now we had the third generation of our team. And just a little bit about the business. One of the issues with wearing glasses is that if you have a high-strength lens, then the glasses become very heavy. It could also be conceived to be inconvenient even if they're not that high strength. And you also, when you buy new glasses, you have to wait for a couple of weeks before you get your glasses. And these panes, we will remove because we can make very thin lenses with our technology, so they will be only 0.5 millimeter thick. They will be ultra lightweight, means that even 10 times lighter than today's high-power lenses, and we can print them while you're waiting in the shop. It means that you will go into the shop, have your eyes tested, and then you will walk out with a pair of glasses that suits your needs. As I said earlier on, we want to disrupt the market ourselves because we think we need to do that. We don't think it will be easy to have people help us. But of course, we know we cannot go all the way, so we said, okay, how far can we go? And we say, okay, we will prove the technology, but we would also prove it on a small scale in the market by introducing it in the market ourselves. And we believe that once we have proven that in the market, then there will be several options for global expansion. Because, as Anna said, you have to think big, and I think we are really thinking big here. We want not just the Danish market or the European market, we want the world market. And a little bit on the FED. This is the first time I'm involved in a FED program. And I think for us, what was good is that because of the money, the funding, we were able to get the right team. And I think the right team gets things done. The right team members also have enough knowledge or deep knowledge to do the right things. And then, of course, as always in a startup or a spin-out, you need to have the enthusiasm, the drive to say, okay, it's really fun to do something nobody has done before. So this is the exciting part to say, okay, let's go where nobody has walked before. Some of the things, and I think that's a little bit in line with what Anna said, is that you need to interact more with customers. You need also to develop your product. And I think we didn't have funding enough or don't have funding enough to really do it as well as we think we should be doing it. So to build some demonstrators, product development, you called it, I think it's the same thing. And I think in all of these projects, I think my personal opinion is that customer interaction should really be encouraged at a very early stage because you get some feedback that will help you decide on the road forward. And we are thinking, as I said, we are not really have started a company yet, but we are already laying the foundation and we have added people to the team. So now they are developing our lens technology, and we are training them to be part of the company once we get off the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Bo. Then we know a lot about Creamtrack as well. Thanks for reminding us that we switched companies. Still, we have some important lessons learned from you. I mean, it's similar to Anna's case in one sense, that we need this customer-focused demonstrations to get close to market, close to customer signals, and that's how we can speed up and make the product development cycle more rapid and more relevant. Those were the two presentations, and then can I ask you, Paul Lukovic, please to take the stage. Scientific Director for Embedded Intelligence at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, a pioneer in Internet of Things. You have more than 15 years of participation in FET projects, and your startup experience is rigor. We will see that. The floor is yours, Paul. So give him a big round of applause.
Yeah, thank you very much. So fitting to go last, I want to show not a single startup, but sort of a laid-back view of what I realized to my fright is nearly 2 decades of working now with FATH. And that includes a broad range of projects that you see here. And one thing I realized yesterday when thinking about the impact of that is that it's not just startups. There's a lot of talk now in the community about capacity building. And that project has been instrumental to so many careers. It's been instrumental to my career. But when I look at my PhD students, actually the most successful and the best of them have been the one I have put to work on that project. The best way to actually get good people have been to tell them, you can work on the FAT project, you see what the project does, because they knew they will be engaged internationally, they can work, they have a lot of freedom, they can work on interesting topics. And what may be good or bad, my 2 people I'm most proud of, which is Jingguang Cheng and Kai Kunze, are now top professors at top universities. UCST is one of the top 5 Chinese universities. Keio is one of the top Japanese universities. So they're not in Europe anymore. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad. We have to think about that. And of course, we're involved in startups, and the startups I've done that's an interesting thing in FAT project goes for a very broad range. For something like construction, which is a NOVA, through healthcare, mental health, to public safety and security. The one of public safety and security, SIF software is one of the oldest one. Interestingly, it developed from an area which you wouldn't think could result in something. It was the FAT proactive on complex systems. Which was on theory, but then we realized we can do something practical. And FAT and the reviewers supported us in doing it. And we built a system that is now used in event management. And there's a lot of things that the Commission really wants IT in Europe to do, right? We do something like surveillance, but we do it in a European system that adheres to GDPR, adheres to privacy, and does use data for things that we really want them to be used, for safety, for the good of citizens. And beyond those projects, those startups, I'm actually a partner and you know, part of. There are a number of others I contributed to because they emerged from the project I was running or involved with. And I'm involved in various roles as an advisor. Again, they go from smart fashion through to things like really industrial applications. I would like to spend some time talking about the one on industrial applications, which is the Ubimax one. So it's a company that, again, does a lot of the things that the Commission likes to see. They are building wearable systems for industrial applications. So they enhance European strength in manufacturing. They do not try to reinvent what Google and people do. They take what Google and people produce and build applications which Google and Co cannot build because they have access to the industrial base on which they can do it. Then I have 70 people working for them. They are taken very seriously by Google and other smart glasses manufacturers. They are their distributor. And I personally believe they have the chance of becoming a really, really big company in the long run. What is really interesting, talking about what Pathfinder can do, is to look at the history of that company. So it emerged as a startup from the Wear It at Work project, which ran from 2004 to 2009. When one of the big IPs was fairly criticized at this time because we're doing something that was very forward-looking. And this project could never have come about without FAT. So the root of these projects are in the FAT Disappearing Computing Initiative, that some of those of you who are as seasoned as I am may remember, that proposed things very revolutionary at the time as phones with sensors, as phones with internet access, wearable computers. And it were people like myself, like Hans Gellersen, who was actually a very understanding reviewer in the Wear It at Work project, who really allowed this project to produce something good, to emerge, and who were instrumental in making the project happen in such a way that in the end, something like Ubimax could have emerged. And then Ubimax was funded in 2011, which is like 10 years after actually the Disappearing Computer Initiative. And 3 years after the end of the project. And initially it was a small company, as you do it, not a garage, but they were in Bremen, somehow in a very nice location next to the sea. But it took them 5 years actually to gain importance. It was 2016 that they received a major share of venture capital funding and became what they are today. So it's 15 years from what FAT started doing to a real success, and it will take another 5 years, maybe, for them to become a real powerhouse. And I think this is timescales on which you have to think. And this is something where very often FET and other research receives too little credit for, because people just looked at what did emerge at the end of the project, and very often there's little. And if you look at the capacity building and you look at the long-term effects, I'm sure this is one story I experienced it myself, so I dug it out. But I'm sure if you look at the history of FET and various European projects, you can find a lot of such stories that actually have been there and people have not looked at. So one of the success things, it really is FET, high risk, high gain, challenging current thinking, being interdisciplinary, being flexible. In all of the cases where we were successful, the flexibility of the projects and the reviewers to do what is interesting and right, and not to stick as strongly as possible to some bureaucratic proposal we wrote 4 years ago, was the key. And then, of course, what I really like about FET, it was mentioned before, it helps you build things. And the building thing, I want to finish with an example of something that is different. Different area, aerospace, maybe you know Elon Musk as his SpaceX. They were not launching any rockets in 2012. In 2018, they owned 65% of the rocket market. Why did they do that? Two things. They didn't focus on old-fashioned hardware. They focused on intelligence that allows the rocket to land. And that's a very important message for Europe. We have a huge industrial base. You might think aerospace is, we have this big industrial base, nobody can overtake you. No. Somebody comes, adds intelligence. It's intelligence where that add value is. The second thing, how they develop this. On the left side, you see the landing rocket. And to get there, they didn't write proposals, work for years to understand how to land rocket. They just tried to land a bloody rocket. They crushed the rockets. And the press said, they failed. And Elon Musk said, no, we didn't fail. What I love is the sentence that really simplifies this mindset is, it was not an explosion. It was unscheduled deconstruction. Yeah? And so in summary, FET in a way really brings the Silicon Valley spirit to Europe. And what has been instrumental for us to summarize, in getting all the startups, in every of those proposals, we have exploitation plan, business plans, we have innovation sessions. And yes, we of course did them. We signed up to do them, we did it. But they had nothing to do, in the end, with the success. What had to do with the success were the people. It was the fact that FET allowed me to get the best PhD student, to get those PhD students to actually interact internationally. They were doing stuff that got recognition in Silicon Valley all over the world. So I traveled to Silicon Valley for conferences. They got to interact with the people, to see what you can do. And they were excited about what they're doing. They had flexibility to do what was interesting, right, and had potential, support, encouragement. And it were those people who really funded the startups. So I'm talking about capacities, people, and citizens. That was probably one of the most important disruptive innovation effect of FET. I think it's a good thing to stop with. Thank you.
Very good. Many thanks, Paul. And what we see from this case is some similarities with Anna. I mean, it was clear that you also had a very lengthy time scale. And then what strikes me, at least by Paul's cases, is that it really puts the question, what is innovation? I know that we have a different innovation types out there. We have a lot of product innovation. We have a lot of incremental innovation. What is really distinguishable about some of the cases that you bring forward is that we have also an innovation of the type where we question the current paradigm, really, like the SpaceX case. So I think we are all grateful that you can inspire us and that you can make your points regarding strengths and needs from FET that explicit. I think it's an excellent base for the panel discussion. And just to spice it up, we would like to welcome Arianna Vignati and Jürgen Jennert to the stage, please. So just to be a bit brief about Arianna. You're at the School of Design at Politecnico di Milano. You are an expert in the field of creative companies. You are an experienced incubator professional. So you deal with startups and early phase companies. Very warm welcome to the panel. And then we have Jürgen Jänert. You're the CEO of BVcom, a Stuttgart-based company in Germany, and you support other companies that undergo digital transformation. So it's about products and offerings, but also competences, resources, and business model as well for your clients and customers. And I would suggest that we do the following in this panel, that we ask first Ariana to just elaborate a bit on your reactions, interpretations, and thoughts as you see the presentations. You will be given 2-3 minutes, and then we'll jump to Jürgen, and he can establish a similar perspective as well. Please, Ariana.
Thank you. I'm sorry for my voice, but no voice this morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm a little bit out of this general event because I'm from the design field, and the design field is out of the science and the research-based activity. But in this case, I'm here because we had the chance to work in a collaboration action in the FAT stream, and we bring into our project an human-centered approach in order to understand what kind of needs FAT researchers have and how we can design activities and services tailor-made for them in order to answer to their needs. I don't want to burden you with the results of our research, but I would put only some very interesting insights. We have done a survey to all the FAT Innovation Launchpad projects, and we performed a lot of interviews to researchers. And I think the passion the panelists have transferred today is the same passion we realized talking with the researchers. Then passion is, I think, the main value in general that characterize this kind of researchers. But we discovered 4 main challenges they faced during their research journey. First is time, and I think all the panelists say time is an amazing variable in the pathway of FAT projects, because there is risk, they don't know what happened, they should be very flexible. Then time is a very important variable, and I think European Commission should consider this in order to be maybe more flexible in support this kind of project. Another important issue is market. We realized that FAT researchers started with a certain idea of market, but be in a market is a different story. Then you could have a briefly idea on what kind of users, what kind of customers, what kind of market do you reach, but reach market is something very different and more complicated. Another important issue is business mindset. Business mindset, and not be entrepreneur or have an entrepreneurial mindset, but business mindset is something very out of the mindset of researchers. But they need to learn which is what does it mean, and which is the way to enter in this sort of mindset. And the last one is communication, because communicate to investors, communicate to other companies, communicate with your customers is something that you have to learn, because sometimes you cannot use a technical language. You need to shift your language with other maybe values, with other variables, and then it is something you have to learn. This is more or less what emerged from our research, and I think it's in line with the, what emerged in the panelists. Just to close, some lessons learned from our research. First of all, we understood that researcher is a part of a great ecosystem. A researcher is inside an organization, and the organization is inside an ecosystem of actors, suppliers, service centers, consultancy agency, and so on. And support a researcher in be more in create an easy way to reach all the actors useful for the research in the ecosystem is the best way to create the most important effective of the research. And another important point is flexibility.
That's your last point, Ariano. Thanks a lot. So 4 difficulties and then a bit of a solution in the end, ultimately connecting the entrepreneur and the entrepreneurial initiative in the system. Thanks for now. Over to you, Jürgen. What is your reflections and comments?
So, first of all, and I think if you see here, disruptive, radical and disruptive innovation, I was asking myself, what is this? What does this mean, radical information, disruptive innovation? I think we in Europe, we are very strongly technology focused, and all our innovations, thinking and acting is pushed by technology. And this is a bit the continuous evolution of a candle, and we all know that this did not lead to electric light. I mean, it's clear. And when I was now hearing these presentations, very good and very stable startups, very good work, and there is a global trend which is oil of our future. Business is data, and I had not the impression that we sufficiently focus on data generation, value generation based on data. We try to copy Google and all these companies at the end, and we are not so happy that we have these big data companies in US, and Europe is a sales market for these big companies. They make the business, and we have the technology. I remember we have implemented MPEG in Europe, very successful, but the business exploitation was fully done in US. That's why, I mean, what is now the radical and disruptive path on this? My feeling also, probably just the feeling from these presentations here, and also the presentation from some other FED projects. So we do not really focus. We try to compete with the Silicon Valley, but we do not really focus on the business exploitation. And if whenever the business exploitation leads to a radical, disruptive path, we continue in the evolution path of the candles. This is my impression, what we have here in Europe, and then we say, oh shit, why we don't have these large companies like Google and Facebook and so on. They think, what, on the value generation level, disruptive. They think disruptive. We do not really think disruptive. And then, of course, and this was when Paul's comment, we had also, and we think technology focused. And yes, probably it was the technology, how to land with the rocket. Probably it was the technology, but probably it was Elon Musk. It was the character, the person, the human being who was able to convince investors who get the money. And this is the mindset. And it's probably not the technology, but I had also the feeling that we overemphasize, once again, the technology in Europe, in the Fed, in all this history. And data generation, new business, leaving our tunnel, I think we could do better. So this is why I think, yes, you have to celebrate yourself a bit, but on the other side, it's probably good to reflect what's going on in the world. And again, if really oil is the future of our economy, sorry, data is the future of it's the oil of our future economy, sorry. Data is the future oil of our economy. So that's how it sounds more. Yes, data is the future oil of the economy. Then probably we have to think disruptive on this level. And probably we have not sufficiently the people, the mindset, the culture, the mentality, in order to put here something on the world market and not to leave the business, this whole data business, to US companies, and we provide the technology, and at the end of the day, the labor is generated otherwhere in the world. So this technology-oriented tunnel where we are, I think if you really would like to disruptive, we have to think how to leave the tunnel.
Jürgen, thanks a lot. So the improvement of the candle did not create the light bulb, and you're really pointing at that we are maybe not so disruptive as we think we are. Excellent. And perhaps we can get a first comment from you, Paul. You've been in the information kind of paradigm. You dealt with the Internet of Things. What is your comment on this? Are we disruptive enough?
So I would strongly disagree with the comment that it's not about the technology, the problems of technology focus. The problem is we do develop very interesting technologies, and you cannot really make progress without those technologies. The problem is, and we do agree, a mindset. And okay, coming from the science community, I would just put the blame on the business people. I mean, that's what you need to do. I understand it's a little bit of perspective. The problem, of course, is very often the European businesses have this mindset of, here I have my established business model. If I take this new technology, it doesn't really support this established business model, right? To exploit this, I would need a new business model. And they don't want to do it. And I have one story. It's very, very nice. I don't know if it's true, but I talk about this disappearing computer project, and they really develop concepts, the technology, to include sensors, internet access, browsing, everything into phones. That was 10 years before the iPhone. And it's not true that these were scientists working in the ivory tower, because in all those projects, for example, a small European company named Nokia, right? They're not that small there, was actually involved. And they never capitalized on that. And why did they not do? They actually did come to the stage when they had prototypes of phones that could work in this direction. And what I heard, and I'm not sure it's true, but that's what we've heard from people, is one of the reasons it never came further is that Nokia had a scoring system for their phones. Anything that sold under 20 million or whatever was deemed irrelevant. And of course, in the beginning, all those smartphones, even the iPhone, I think, in the first years sold 1 million. So the thing did not conform with the standard business models and got shut down. The Apple came day and said, you don't care about phone, we do these things. And you see many, many of those things. The other sad story is there was a German company that was making phones that were very, very good, mobile phones. I talked to the engineers and they told me a story. They once came to the management and asked them, you know what, we have a semiconductor branch, we've been phones, maybe we can put a camera into that phone. You know what the management said? No, we are building business tools, not toys.
Yes, I see. But then I think, Paul, that you do not fully disagree, but you would like to add a certain perspective, namely that technology, if it's on a business platform and you kind of bring in the business orientation, then it could be a good thing. Before I ask you a question, Anna, perhaps I can hint at this thing. Are there any questions from the audience? Because this is a paddy mic that I can actually toss over to you. And I think we can mic it up.
Does it work? Closer.
Yeah, that's very good.
It's
Please state your name and who you are, and then ask the question.
My name is Rente Sanz. I come from the Center de Recerca Matemàtica in Barcelona, mathematical research. And I kind of agree with Jürgen, okay? I'm the general scientific manager instead of the deputy to the scientific director. And I had never persuaded my researchers, who are both in fundamental and applied mathematics, to apply to FET, okay? Because it's got the word technology, okay? Google was based on an algorithm. Obviously, that happened, I don't know, in 98, 99, but it didn't happen in Europe. So we have all this data revolution, but everything we have seen so far, in most cases, is not really challenging the algorithms dealing with the data. All this sort of fancy machine statistical learning is statistics. So I don't think in most cases the radical and disruptive innovation is really channeling to FET. Maybe it's different from nano, from materials. I mean, when I take the projects, they are more risky. I mean, in terms of the pure IT, they're computer science projects. And when I say that, it's like deployment software. So EIC Pathfinder in the part of like what we're going to transform into companies, fine. I know the KPIs I have to deliver. But what is the beginning? What is the TRL? For me, it's kind of conventional in most cases. Conventional for a fundamental scientist.
Oh, very good. So thanks a lot. That was a really important perspective. We shouldn't take the kind of upstream work for granted. There is not always ample commercializable research results queuing up outside our door. I really take that as your comment and request. Very good. Please have it in your knee, Pepe, and we will have it tossed to the back in just a while. Anna, could I ask you if they are true that we might not be really as disruptive as we think we are, and we really need to bring a business perspective early upstream in the kind of research, innovation, commercialization, and societal impact value chain, what would you recommend the Commission to do? What are the key concerns as they develop their structure and their personal competence in this respect?
Yeah, I strongly disagree. I do live in the US because I moved there 4 years ago to Boston, which is one of the life sciences innovation hubs in the world. And I wanted to push neuroelectrics and our technology in the US market. So I moved there. And I've learned a lot both about the Silicon Valley and my life in Boston. I think that to compete in the world, also with Asia, you need technology, and you need deep technology. So FED and programs like FED is key. So, I mean, it's not a debate. I wouldn't be here, I couldn't compete in Boston without the level of technology that I have achieved, and I wouldn't do it without FED. I'm thinking super shot to the moon, because otherwise it's innovation, it's not breakthrough technology. And so to me, that's my personal, it's like without these breakthrough technologies, you don't make it. But it's not enough. You need to push it into the market to compete. And the Americans, it's true they have a business mentality that we don't have. It's true that they have a much bigger deal flow. But listen, technology-wise, they are not better than us. I see them every day. They are not better than us. They are better on the business side. So I think that what we need is the European Innovation Council. We didn't have this. We need money for the startups. We need support for the startups to scale. But I don't think we need to make this choice between research and business. We just have to push, to the business side a little bit, but never forget the support to research. And the Silicon Valley, I have my questions. I know Google and Facebook, but the ethical issues and the issues that are happening in Palo Alto, you ask a millennial if he will want to work for some of the companies in the Silicon Valley. This is changing. This is an opportunity for Europe. I think we are pessimistic. I think we are not aware of what we have. And I think we have to fight strong. I mean, are you just really losing the battle with America and Asia? Have you decided we are not playing a game? So come on, we have excellent academia and research. We just need a bit of push into the business side, a few examples for our millennials to wake up. So I really think Europe has a tremendous opportunity in the world because Asia and the US have ethical issues that are going to play a role in the future, I tell you. So if we are smart, if we play our cards, we can compete. So I'm on the fight, and I think that the rest of you should be on board as well. We can do this. I promise.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Anna. You can keep the mic. So really stressing also the kind of business foundation of disruptive technologies. But I must also, before I go and get the padded mic, I must also kind of draw my conclusion, and that is that the capacity of disruptive business model innovation is also needed, I think, and perhaps that's an area of kind of competence or area of assessment capacity, etc., that we might want to think more of. I go get the mic from you, Pepe, and yes, we have it over here. I throw it just because I can. Please.
Good throw. Building a little bit on the...
Please state who you are and where you're from.
Yep.
Thanks.
Margaret Mulligan, the European Business and Innovation Centre Network, EBN. So building a little bit on the first question, it's a question not just related for FET, but very much for FET and for the EIC more generally. I love what's happening in FET and how closely it's connected with the European Innovation Council, because we see these great stories. I get passionate, I get excited, optimistic about the future when I hear these wonderful stories. It's really where the public investment in research and innovation seems to be most justified. Now, when I hear about the Future Horizon Europe programme, I wonder how the EIC is going to actively engage with not just the pipeline that's coming through from the EIC Pathfinder, but also the pipeline of innovations that are coming through under the Excellent Science pillar, the Global Challenges and Industrial Competitiveness pillars, to fulfill. Somebody said this morning that the EIC has a public responsibility to get the research results out of the lab to the market. So how all the expertise in innovation and research exploitation of the EIC is going to be taken up. So, and it's also a question for those leading the pillars 1 and 2, how are they going to reciprocate? The EIC has involved the ERC in its advisory board, so how is that going to work both ways?
Very good. So it seems, Margaret, that you're after kind of the deal flow for the EIC. How is that
exactly
kind of
from the other, where the 90 billion is going to, for the 90 billion that's not invested in EIC, how we're going to take that to market?
Perhaps we can answer that in the following way. Anna, if we put an additional hat, not only being a kind of child of FET, but also a member of the European Innovation Council, could you elaborate a bit on that question from that perspective, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not aware of all them, but yesterday on the board we discussed, how we are going to not only from the Pathfinder, but also allow, we want to be like the Lighthouse, like the place where entrepreneurs and innovators meet. And there was a lot of discussion whether good innovators in Europe are only technologically based. And the debate is no. The reality is that they may be people with little technology and a good business model that can scale up a company. So on the board there was strong discussion yesterday to really be super open to any innovator that will knock at the door for funding, grants, or acceleration. So, I think that we are relying on the local networks to send us, all the entrepreneurs and innovators. And one thing we discuss is the branding. How are we going to make this look not like the Commission in the bad sense, something that is attractive to entrepreneurs? So I think, there is a branding team that is going to have to discuss what is the name, what is the logo, how do we attract, all these innovators into the Commission?
Yeah, that's very good. And I can also add that if I'm at Chalmers University and I would like to go around and scout for knowledge assets that helps me make that leap with my research environments, I know that there's a big difference if I go to a research group that is funded by FET or by any other progressive research funding body, like the Strategic Research Foundation in Sweden. I know that researchers that got that grant got it because they think differently and they think further down the road. Compared to a more excellence-oriented grant, I know that the research questions weren't formulated with that mindset from the start. So it means that if we are to get a strong deal flow from ERC, for instance, I think that we need to kind of look at the DNA or the setup of ERC and see how they have their researchers perceive the particular context where their research questions are formulated. So I think it's a mistake if we consider 25 billion euro dedicated to ERC-funded research, and we see that as a 100% deal flow just to connect to EIC. It will not work. Simply because there are differences in quality between research environment. Might not be so obvious, but to my mind, that's a kind of central feature to take a standpoint in. Before we toss the mic around more, I have a question to you, Bo, and perhaps you can answer also to some extent, Anna, but we'll start with Bo. And it relates to the prototype to product gap, so to speak. That was a clear need that was demonstrated by Anna, and you put it like this: customer-focused demonstrations, obviously trying to get close to customer signals. What would your recommendations be for the EIC and for the Commission to cope with this? How shall they do it?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we experienced is that we wanted to move around in the budget, so allocate more money in order to be able to do more, you can say, hardware development compared to what was in the original budget. And I think that was something of a slow thing to try to do. But I also think that's it. I think so. Make it more flexible. I think it was also articulated by some of the other on the panel, and I think that would be one of the things. But I also to realize that you don't always from the beginning understand what you need to do, because you interact with customers and then you find out that you need to change something. Things has to be, you maybe end up in a different place where you started out. So there has to be a flexibility in the programs, both in you can say in time of money, but also in maybe in time. And say, okay, maybe we need an extension, maybe we need, and I think maybe you need to say, okay, but you have to have a second round rather than just an extension, because I think that's also, I like to finalize things and then say, okay, now we go into a different phase and then we need to move on. So that would be another way that I, from my, you can say my background as doing development work, say, okay, I like to finalize the project and then start a new one rather than just make an evolution of the old one, because I think the other one creates more focus.
Okay, very good. So we're back to the flexibility issue. As you start out and develop your knowledge assets, it's a marathon, we know that, and then it's an kind of innovation and impact marathon as well. And we need to have pocket of resources to kind of handle needs that come up further on in the process. Okay, I see, very good. It boils down to that. And then I have a question to you, Ariana, with the very exciting survey that you conducted. You see the need for a business mindset, and what would you reckon be a better place for the entrepreneur in relation to the EIC Pathfinder? What would you reckon to be the most favorable place for an entrepreneur?
I think one important recommendation should be the creation of more flexible relationship between this kind of stream of research and funding with other streams of funding that European Commission already have. And the problem is to maybe create the good environment in which all these programs can meet together, because I've never been in Silicon Valley, but I know you know where the investors are. You can meet them, and not once a year, every day. I think we should stress the idea to create a stable environment in which all these actors can meet together, because this is what the researchers are asking now. And the cross-fertilization among some funding streams that European Commission have in business, startups, business and training, and so on, and what FAT researchers are asking.
Very good. Thanks a lot, Ariana. So fragmentation of innovation ecosystem is really a key. If only Lombardy knew what Lombardy knows, huh? Then we would be better off. I'm sorry, we don't have the time. Many of us will linger around after this session. This session is over. Thanks a lot for contributing with your time and your questions. Thank you a lot. Panelists and presenters for sharing your experiences. I mean, I'm not the only one that is excited about these developments. Clearly, we have a larger potential. My take is that we have a larger potential than I thought we would have, really. I think we have some clear points here on whether we are disruptive or not, whether we are fragmented or not, whether we are technology-focused enough or not, or whether we are business-centric with the technology focus that we wish to have. Hope you were stimulated as well. A big round of applause to everyone. Thanks a lot.